Hi, Kurt. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. How are you, Commissioner?
Good. Can you hear the meeting?
Not yet. I hear you.
There we go. All right. I think we're on.
Good morning, Kurt.
There they are.
Okay, well, we already approved the agenda. Did you have any concerns about the agenda, Kurt?
No, none.
Yep, that's already been passed. We're entertaining a motion on the minutes from the last meeting.
Move to approve as presented. I'd second that.
Any further discussion on the minutes from May 11th? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Next up, public comment. And we do not have any members of the public present here nor online that I see. Is that correct, Rachel?
No one online.
No one online, so okay. And we've been joined in the meeting room by Chief Huda of the Longview Police Department. Mark, welcome. Are you voting today? Yes. For Jim? Okay, another voting member, Chief Huda. No public comments. Move on to number 5, payables. Those were sent out last week. Is there any discussion or questions for staff on the payables? Okay. Hearing no discussion, I'd entertain a motion on approval for the payables.
Move to approve as presented.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Carries. Okay, next up, your item number 6, financial report for May 2022 says no action needed. Is there any comments you have on that, Rachel? Or-
No action needed. I'm just gonna go over a couple line items with you guys, just so you know. We should be at a remaining of 58%. So for revenues, we're looking really good. The only line item that is not gonna come in, I don't think as budgeted, is our operation taxes for our wireline wireless 40. They're coming in a little bit low. But our sales tax is looking like by the end of the year, we're gonna be at 2.9 instead of the 2.6 that was budgeted. And then the other thing, there's a couple line items, they look a little heavy, like we have quite a bit remaining. We don't, it's usually just one vendor that hasn't billed us yet. So when those vendors come in and bill us, then those line items will look more in balance. And then the only other thing at the very bottom, you'll see negative cash. That's just because the interest items that came in for May didn't make it into this report. I didn't know what they were yet when I created it. So there's no negatives except for that custodial fund. There is a negative. KPTV has just paid their 2 payments, so it'll be positive next month when you see it.
Is there any questions for Rachel on the financial report? All right, hearing none. If I could take the liberty, I wanted to jump up just for to help a couple folks that are on, move up to number 13, the board comments, the law attack and fire attack. So Troy Brightwell's here, and I know Sammy had something for fire. So Troy, if you want to pop up there and do a law attack update for us.
Yeah, just with everything going on, we did have a meeting prior to the launch to just walk through stuff, get everybody prepared for the CAD launch. And then we had a follow-up meeting on Tuesday to go over any issues so that the law agency users could report in any problems that they're having or anything that we needed worked on while Motorola support was still on site. We whittled down a list. About half the things had already been addressed before we got that meeting started. And we are working on a few other issues. All in all, they're fairly minor tweaks that we're making. Otherwise, our guys in the field are getting familiar with the new system. It's working pretty well.
Well, thank you. Is there any questions for Troy? Hearing none, we'll let him get back to work. And
If I could just add something for the law tech, we want to express our appreciation. All of the law agencies and fire agencies worked really, really well with us during this transition from Intergraph to the new Spillman CAD. We appreciate the patience with your units in the field and with your admin staff. You really, really helped make this better than it might have been. We weren't without flaws for sure, but we appreciate all your support and help. I know Troy and Chief Huda and many of the other departments spend a lot of time here with us and fire departments as well. So we appreciate you. Thank you for doing that and for being supportive.
Yeah, it was very, very helpful with the guys in the command post, because it was easy to get solutions to things with people that can make decisions here, some things.
Well, thank you for those comments. Fire tech between Bill and Sammy, if you guys.
Yeah, as far as the tax side of it, we met, same as what Troy was saying. Prior to the switch over, kind of make sure we had our ducks in a row as well as we could. And then Monday, they had their actual meeting, discuss some of the issues that we're still having. And then the radio manual was the other big topic. It was getting really close to the steps. Sammy.
Yeah, it's not from the fire tech group, but it seemed like the appropriate spot in the agenda to make the request, as all fire districts and plus Longview are either using or implementing the use of Image Trend for their national fire incident reporting and their national EMS reporting and their electronic patient care reports. I asked at the last meeting if I could move to look into a possible joint account with Image Trend, or for the purposes of the budget, the Counts 911 would be the account holder, and then every agency would have their separate account to work with. And I did speak with Image Trend about that, and they said there are regions and counties throughout the United States that do that, quite a few of them. So it is a possibility, and there is an opportunity for some cost savings through economy of scale. District 3 and District 6 may not incur the same cost savings, but it would definitely allow you to not be limited by the uses through the state. And I'm not sure what District 1 is going to wind up doing, but I was going to ask if the Image Trend can make a presentation, because I don't want to lose anything in the interpretation if I explain it, what the opportunities are and what would be involved. If they could make a presentation to the, either, I guess we could do it at a fire TAC meeting, or would it be more appropriate to do it here?
I think we'll make the fire tech and just make a recommendation.
Okay, and I'm happy to attend that as well.
Okay,
Well, as far as having Calus 911 do the ownership and billing of it, that absolutely. Yeah.
okay. There would be a need for one system-wide administrator of the program, and they would be granting the passwords, and they would also be granting the data set managers. But I think, like you say, we're not reinventing the wheel. There are other counties and regions that do that. So I'll schedule something with the fire tech group, and then after that, we'll make a recommendation to the authority.
Thank you. Are there any questions for any of the fire chiefs here? Okay. Well, hearing none, we'll move along and get back on track. Number 7, approval of the guild collective bargaining agreement. John, do you want to comment on the guild's at and where we're at?
Yeah, so the guild their group has ratified the agreement as we settled. It has been a few weeks now because just when we had the board meeting. I think the board is aware of everything that we went to. We came to you with parameter changes a few weeks ago at the very end. The guild was appreciative of us working with them and making it a more productive document that is useful to both parties. So we're very pleased with it. Just as a reminder, the bottom line, as far as dollars and things, we end up with a 5% increase. There was an additional 1.25%, which did away with the shift differential pay that we had been paying historically, which is pretty much a wash, that extra 1.25. And we did word that very intentionally to say that it was 5% cost of living based on CPI, as well as the additional wording of the 1.25, so that would not interfere with or exist in other conversations when other bargaining groups in the county and in the region are looking at our bargaining when they go to the table. So we didn't want to look like, hey, we're giving everyone 6.25. It's 5, but there's that 1.25. So the total effect is 6.25. The other difference is our health insurance coverage or amount that we pay went from $1,550 to $1,650 a month. in covering health insurance. And again, we still have the VIBA, our new hires going forward, instead of having that 15, or in this case now 1650 in VIBA, we'll now have a cap of $750 a month. So if we have someone who their spouse or someone has them on their coverage and they don't need coverage from us, instead of the traditional getting the full 1650 VIBA, they will just get 750. The other major change, that's really all the dollar changes. We added a 2 times a year vacation buyback program in May and December. They can buy back up to 40 hours each of those times, as long as they keep 40 hours minimum in their bank, which for most of our people is not an issue.
I'm trying to think, when was the holiday pay, reached agreement on that?
Yeah.
Time and a half. But that language.
Yeah.
And then we'll break up the bonus, the retention bonus.
Yeah, so there is a retention bonus. We gave a lump sum that they have chosen to divide equally among themselves. Options were discussed about, you know, longevity and how long you've been here. And some people get more than others, et cetera. As a unit, they agreed to just split that evenly amongst themselves. So, and that total was 75,000 as a retention. Yeah, and the holiday pay issue thing is a thing of the past. We never have to talk about it, discuss it, mention it again, thankfully. The other difference was the vacation accrual. We rounded that up to the nearest quarter. We had some that were, for example, earning 4.67 hours. We rounded all those to a quarter hour. Really negligible on costs overall. So, am I missing anything, Rachel?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Is there any questions of John? For
You
myself?
did add a longevity.
Oh,
Another
yes, we did add, yeah, we did add longevity for 7 years,
7, 12?
12 and 20.
We have another 20 years.
Essentially, it's just after the 20, it's just another pay step essentially, but yeah.
And now there's a dispatcher in charge.
Yeah, we did approve, as previously discussed, the dispatcher in charge program. We're leaving the lead program as it is for now. I will, just to be transparent, I have talked to Bob Schaefer, the guild president, and there are some things that we still want to adjust. None of them will be dollars. It'll just be working conditions and other things that we're going to start working on some MOUs going forward. Just some good ideas they had, some ideas that I've had. And since I wasn't here from the beginning of the bargaining, we're going to address a couple of issues in MOUs, but those will all come to the board for approval as they come up over the next year.
Just, I did notice as I was kind of skimming through this, there are some minor typos and word errors, I think, in the documents. I would suggest that maybe another read through.
Yep.
Just to make sure. Just for example, I know in the section 14.1, there was I think there was a the instead of that, and then 14.4 references sections 14.2 instead of 14.3. Just some minor things like that. Honestly, I haven't had a chance to read through in detail, but I just suggest maybe somebody go through and that maybe perhaps hasn't been as involved, maybe, so that, because it's easy, I know it's easy to read over those kinds of things, especially if you're the one that's having to dump it in or whatever. But I would just suggest that. Otherwise, I would move that we accept the bargaining agreement and appreciate all the hard work by both staff, the sheriff, and the guild for stepping up and make this happen.
months and months.
Months and months. I know a lot of blood, sweat, and tears at times.
Yes, we will make the grammatical corrections.
Yeah, they're minor. I think most of the time you can read over them, but if we can get it as accurate as possible.
Absolutely. We'll take care of that.
We do have a motion. A motion aside. Is there any further discussion or questions concerning? Mr. Chairman?
I had one question, Sheriff, if I could, just on the vacation buyback portion. Is that an automatic or is that predicated upon our financial ability to pay? And I ask that because, we have a similar policy here, but it's not automatic. It is predicated upon, vacation balances, what they have. And I know you speak to that they have to have at least 40 available after the buyback. But the other piece is if we're into, recessionary times, perhaps where we have financial constraints upon our ability to pay, we can deny those buybacks. And that's the question I had.
I don't think there's any contingency on that language. Is there
Um,
director's discretion? I don't recall that.
It is upon request. It's not an automatic thing that everyone just gets every time. It is upon request. And we never know how many people will request it. But yes, you bring up a good point, Mr. Saha. And it is not, let me review that real quick. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I understand the request piece of it, but I guess my question is, do you have the authority to deny it if in fact you feel financially that the 911 authority isn't in a financial position to be able to make that payment?
One second.
13.9 on page 19. Yeah, there's no contingency on that. Doesn't require approval by the director.
Yeah, it is just, upon approval, but we will.
Because our thoughts on that on a financial basis was it's cheaper to buy that back at straight time than have them take it and wind up paying overtime for people to cover on that. You run that risk as well. So.
And those dollars are always a liability on the books. When an employee terminates their employment, we're having to pay those out either way. But we can look at that language and I will address that with the guild. And I agree that is good language to have in there.
I mean, because the other side of it is we really do want them to take their vacations. Otherwise, we could shorten the vacation accrual schedule and just give them more money.
Yes.
So that's the other piece of it too. But yeah, if you could look at that, I think that'd be worthwhile.
Very good.
Chief,
I will be abstaining from the vote.
thank you. We do have a motion and a second. Is there any further comments?
Got a hand raised in the top corner there.
A hand raised in the top corner. Dennis Weber.
There, yes. Actually, my question really is to Mr. Saha. In your experience with the city, have you ever had to deny that vacation buyout because of financial reasons?
Yes,
Okay.
but that was back, 9, 10, 11, Dennis, when we were struggling after the Great Recession, if you will. And we were financially in a situation where we just couldn't grant those vacation buyouts.
With all due respect, I thought the president said we're not to use the R word.
Okay, my apologies.
Alrighty, is there any further comments or? Well, all in favor of ratifying the contract with the 911 Dispatcher Guild, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Also vote aye. And okay, that motion does carry. Thank you very much. And as John said, as part of some of the MOUs, clarifying can address that with the guild. Okay. It's like next up, we have item number 8, approval of the purchase card policy update. So, John?
We have just rewritten our policy regarding Visa card, purchase cards, we call them here, I guess, new term for me. We intend to move them from Red Canoe to US Bank. as well as I said, refresh that policy so that it makes more sense. We kind of modeled it after Cal's 2's policy a little bit. And it gives us the authority to move those, as well as how we're going to follow the expenses and account for them. And our finance person, Rachel, will be the auditor for those accounts and track them in our finances. Pretty straightforward. It does change our limits, or we already did that, right?
No, this doesn't involve
This is just the
change our
policy,
limits at
yeah.
all. No, just how it's gonna be used, and all that changed from what you guys have seen before is I took Red Canoe out and I put US Bank in.
Is there any questions for staff on that? They would entertain a motion on this proposal to change banks.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 I'll vote aye. So that motion carries. Next up, we have a resolution to just formally go back to having meetings once a month on the third Wednesday, 10 a.m. in this room. So if you have a chance to read that, is there any discussion on that? Any concerns? If not, I would entertain a motion. We approve resolution 2022-003.
So move.
We have a motion to approve. Is that Kurt
that
or
you,
Dennis? Kurt or
Dennis.
Dennis. All right. And do we have a second? And we have a second from Chief Lamont. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion does carry.
Just a question on that. How soon will we be able to start meeting in the new center?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
Why do you want to hurt me now?
I'm just excited, looking forward to that, so.
We'll quash that enthusiasm.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Alrighty, next up, looks like we have item number 10, approval of petty cash travel expense fund. Non, do you want to address that?
Yes, so currently, if we have our staff attend trainings or travel for any reason, or just for some unknown reason expend money, for example, providing food and snacks and meals while we've done our transition and for other meetings and such. By the time we process those reimbursements through our accounts payable, we're letting our folks hang out there with money expended for 2 or 3 weeks sometimes. As well as a advanced travel fund. That would be part of the same thing. Advanced travel, when people are traveling, I don't claim to understand everyone's financial situation, but I know that it could be a hardship for some if they're traveling for training. This will allow us to advance their per diem, things like that. So currently, instead of going through our regular accounts payable process, this would allow us to have a checking account at Red Canoe with a balance no greater than $2,500. And then during our accounts payable process, we replenish that account to the $2,500. But it gives us a checking account, a checkbook that we can use locally, that myself and Rachel would have access to be able to reimburse those expenses in a more timely manner for our staff, as well as offer up those advanced travel expenses. It's a fairly common practice. I quite honestly was surprised we didn't have one when I got here. I know some of the other agencies do that. So we're asking to establish that account here for us.
And then there's actually 2 items with this. There's a request to approve the fund, and then second is the policy.
Yes, we have a policy to go with it, how that fund will be handled. Deanna, did you have something?
I'm just wondering if the 2,500 is enough, because if you have like 6 people going to training, or, I
Yeah.
mean,
It
sometimes I'm
is,
telling
yeah.
people that, so just wondering.
Yeah, 2,500 is pretty standard.
Okay.
John, I had a question, just actually 2. One, and maybe I didn't catch this earlier, but with the advent of moving to the US Bank purchase cards, would you see the need for the use of petty cash to decrease perhaps?
No, we currently do have purchase cards and for key staff that need those. And we have those, so we're able to use those, for example, for travel, for training. Currently, Rachel or Bree are able to reserve hotels and pay for those hotels and things like that. We're talking more lower cost incidental items to cover, for example, if we have an employee that runs out to grab something at Office Max or Office Depot that we need here in the office, we're able to reimburse them immediately. Just general expenses like that just pop up.
So you wouldn't have your supervisory staff necessarily have the purchase cards to be able to do the same? I guess that's the question. Who all gets the purchase cards?
The purchase cards going forward will be myself. Deanna will have one. No, Deanna will not have one. Dawn, RIT, will have one. Rachel will have one. Bree will have one, and we'll talk a little bit more about Bree's role in a moment. And
That's it.
our facilities manager will have a P card as well.
Okay.
And the limits are pretty low, I think, on those, like, I think Breeze is like 1,500, is that right?
No, we
Rachel is
changed them. They're
5,000.
10,000.
Well, recently it was like 1,500, which is why she had to expend out of her own pocket for
Yeah.
stuff
They're
because.
currently 10,000 and 5,000.
Okay, and the other question I had was on the, and I didn't see it on travel policy, but when we talk about advancing travel, which we do as well, will you use per diems for meals?
We will use per diems for meals. Yes, for example, myself, if I'm traveling and I have a P card, I'll use the P card for my meals and not max out a per diem and not expect to be reimbursed for the difference. That's how I commonly operate. For people that have P cards, I would anticipate that they would pay for their meals with the P card. But
Okay.
for, if I just, we send 2 or 3 dispatchers to the east side or somewhere else for training, we want to be able to let them have that cash up front to cover those expenses, in which case we would use a per diem method.
Okay, all right. That sounds good. And I don't know if we don't have a specified travel policy with regard to explaining those details with regard to meal per diems and such, that might be something we want to look at moving forward.
That is correct. We do have a travel policy, but it does need revisions. And yes, over time, we will get, I would venture to guess over the next several months, you'll see more policies, 2 or 3, I don't want to overwhelm anyone. You'll see a few policies in every meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you for those questions.
Is there any further discussion on, to start with the petty cash travel expense fund, establishing that? Hearing that, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? That motion carries. Next item is the actual approval of the petty cash travel expense fund policy. Is there any questions, follow-ups on that?
I move approval.
We have a motion and a second, Alan Henley and Robert Huda. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? That motion carries. Next up is item number 12, vacation buyback policy for non-represented employees. Joe?
Yeah, so similar to the collective bargaining agreement for our represented employees, allowing them 2 opportunities a year to buy back up to 40 hours. For our non-represented employees, we would like to make available to them a vacation buyback with 1 time a year for 80 hours and still maintaining that minimum 40 hours in their vacation bank. Pretty straightforward, unless you have any questions.
And it looks like this is at the discretion of the executive director.
Correct.
That wording is in there. So. Is there any further questions of staff concerning this recommendation?
I just have the same, I guess, concerns with regard to this as I did with the bargaining group.
And this one does have requires the approval of the executive director for the exempt employees. So we do have that line in there.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Mr. Saha, if you would like, we're willing to reword that. However, with the language with the approval of executive director, if it is a financial burden, I could not approve a specific request.
Okay. Yeah, I would support that.
Okay. We have a motion to approve by Chief Huda and a second by Chief Lamons. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'll vote aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We've already dealt with item 13, the law and fire TAC updates. We're up to number 14, the director's report.
All right, we'll start with staffing update. We currently have 21 dispatchers. 19 of those are signed off and working the schedule. We have 2 that are in training that are both progressing very well. I had meetings with them this week, and they're trained with the trainee and the trainers. They're doing well. These are the 2 that came from this county who already have some experience. And I think we're all in agreement that they'll be signed off within 3 months of their start date. So another 2 months, they'll be signed off. And they're both looking really good to meet that expectation. So we're in good shape there. Since our last meeting, Jules was signed off and is working the schedule as not a trainee anymore. We do have 8 on our admin staff, including our new hire, Brandon Starr. Some of you may know Brandon. He spent a number of years at the county facilities, and then had left recently, went to Kelso School District. And we feel fortunate to have gotten Brandon on our team. He'll do really well for us.
He's a facilities. Well,
He is.
Sorry, Dennis.
Yeah. He'll be our facilities maintenance manager. Or he is. They actually started this week, started on Monday.
Cool.
Again, that's 8 people. For some of you that may have caught that, we've had 8 before, and we still have 8 because we no longer have our human resource generalist, Janelle Edwards. She's no longer with us. With that, speaking of our admin staff, I will be bringing to the board in the next meeting a new job description for a new position that is not it's not a new position that I'm going to ask for a bunch of dollars for. Don't want to scare anyone. We're kind of we're rebalancing admin with the loss of Janelle between Rachel in our finance department, and Bree has been an administrative assistant / public records person. My intent that what I'll be bringing to the board next month is to create a new position called executive assistant / HR administrator. And I want to move Bree to that position. We've talked about how that will work and the assignment of duties and stuff. So it essentially shrinks our admin team by 1 person by absorbing other duties in the 2 positions that make sense to absorb those duties. So you will see that next month coming up.
And Bree has a bachelor's degree in HR as well.
Yeah. Bree is very well qualified for the work that we're asking her to do. Any questions about staffing?
Just in terms of, we're at 21, budget for 23, is there some hiring? Did I miss that?
There is not a hiring underway right at this moment. We are budgeted for 23, and I'll remind you that the board did approve us up to 26 for transitions and trainings. Keep those dollars in my pocket, thank you. But yes, after we get these 2 off training and we have trainers available, we've given them some space to breathe. Because our trainers have been nonstop for quite some time now. Want to give our trainers a little bit of space to breathe, let them do that, and then we will be active hiring again. We will have potentially a couple of retirements within the next year. We'll may have a couple of other leaves within the next year. We have one out on leave right now. By the way, the Schaefers, Kaylee and Bob have welcomed a new little baby to their family last week. So we're excited for them. So we have some leave coverage there as well. But yes, after we have that moment to breathe with trainers, we'll be actively hiring again.
So that's one more new trainee then?
Yeah.
As soon as that kid's old enough, he's in. He's very cute. He'll fit right in with the rest of us. All right, climate and culture. I think I'm going to pretend like I'm saying this a week ago, a week and a few days ago. Overall, mood and morale is improving. And then I say a week ago because then we threw Spillman in the mix this week. That's been very intense and stressful. It's been hard. And I will tell you, we did have a couple weeks there. We did have 4 dispatchers in the last 3 weeks that were out for a short time with COVID. There was a lot of overtime, a lot of extra work. We had one dispatcher who ended up working 11 days in a row. It's just a thing. Aside from those issues, climate and culture, I think we are improving. We're seeing it a little bit. Dispatchers are feeling okay. Again, the Spillman thing kind of threw us for a loop. Speaking of that, and the Spillman transition, quite honestly, there were some failures. There were some failures on our side with training. Some of it was unavoidable because it was during those training weeks that dispatchers had COVID or were out or we were too short staffed and we had to pull people out of training. So that made our training opportunities more difficult. Some of those failures were on the side of Spillman. They did not send the right people to do the things we needed done. We've talked to them about that. They've made that correction for this week with the folks that we have here this week for training. We have brought in additional resources on our own for training. So I think after this first week of burn-in and Spillman, we're in the second week of it now. The dispatchers started to get the hang of it. I don't want to sit here and say, hey, we did it and it was great. It was not pretty. It was not. They never are. I was talking to Deanna about this the other day. Every month, on the first Tuesday of every month, Microsoft pushes out updates to their operating system. And they call it Black Tuesday for a reason, because it's an ugly day. It is a dark, scary day. And anytime you change software, you have updates like that, it's a thing. But our people have stepped up. They've done really well. They've put in the time, they've put in the effort, and they're putting smiles on their faces and they're getting the work done. Hopefully our public hasn't noticed it at all. And again, our field units and our agencies, they've been impacted as well, but they have been very gracious and accepting and giving us that little bit of leeway that we've needed. So overall success, the mood of the dispatchers seems to be okay. I'm not gonna make it sound any better than it is, but overall culture and climate, we are improving. The next item, the facility update. So I know last time we came in and said they pushed our substantial completion to June 22. They've now pushed it to August 16th. Yeah, it's a thing. Some of it is supply chain stuff. Some of it is changes. There have just been some issues. We've had a little more turnover from the contractor. We lost our superintendent. They're going to bring us another one, but we have a good solid project manager who has stepped in acting as a superintendent. He's doing a great job for us. With that, our CRP team, AdCom and More Power, those folks, Deanna's kind of running that whole show. We had a meeting with him yesterday where they said that from the time we get substantial completion, we have power on and we have keys to the building. To get us moved over there, operating there, takes about 4 months. I told them that was not acceptable. That's not good enough because there's no way that I, as a director, am going to walk out on that floor and tell those people that it's going to be anything in 2023. It has got to be 22. It's got to happen this year. and we got to be in there by December 1st. So they had issues, just as an example, like burning in the servers. We wanted to get them up and running, burn them in. Well, they were planning on doing that later. So that's one of those things we're going to grab and do now. We have the servers here. We can do that. In fact, it might be beneficial to us to go ahead and move all of our Spillman stuff over to the new server that has more horsepower, better ability to deal with the demand that we've placed on the existing server this last week. We've learned a lot. So they have agreed to work with us. We don't have an exact plan yet. They're taking it back to their people, their engineers and such. And we're reworking that because I simply refuse to take this thing into 23. So my goal is that we will be sitting in that building, functioning in that building, dispatching and doing everything else by December 1st at the very latest. Hopefully sooner. We'll do our best and we are pushing back. Deanna and Don have been phenomenal at tracking everything and making sure that we're on target and doing what extra things we can do to accommodate their schedule so that they can move up their timelines for us. So I wish I had better news. If you've been by the building, it's looking great. More and more siding is going up. The parking lot is done. They haven't put the lines on it yet, but the parking lot is in. The countertops are in, the cabinetry's in, the raised floor is in most of the building. It's not quite in the server room yet because of the racks. The racks are there now and standing there. They just have to attach them to the floor. So that's a huge piece that's being wrapped up now. And they're starting some of the final finishing things like the ceiling grid stuff is going in and they're actually putting up the grid is there now. They're actually putting in the panels and things. So there is good solid progress every day. But unfortunately, because of delays with one of the things is tile in the bathroom. That was just the thing that delayed us. So anyway, the building, that's where we're at with the building. If you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them without us getting too excited about wanting to twist heads off at the contractor.
So the tile for the bathroom just wasn't available for a while, or?
It was not available, so we had to choose a different tile. And it, quite frankly, because there's an architect involved, then there's a contractor involved, and then there's us as the owners involved. It takes an act of God to get somebody to change a tile and decide what tile it's going to be. The reality of it is they sent a sample here to us. They sent it to the interior designer for the contractor. We never got our sample. For some reason, they couldn't figure out the address to get it to us. This is just a small example. So we never actually saw the piece of tile, but we saw pictures of it. We saw images of how it looks and everything from the tile manufacturer. And we went ahead with it and said, yeah, go ahead and make it so, do the thing, because we're not willing to wait for some things like that. Incidentally, my family and I were building a new house. We were down in Vancouver at our design center for ours, and they happened to have the tile that we're picking out for the bathrooms in the new center. So I actually did get to see it. And it's great and it's beautiful. It's not going in my house, but it'll be great for the 911 center. So yeah, there's just been delays like that. We're knocking these things down quicker than we had in the past and trying to make up some headway.
I think that it might be prudent to have an executive session at the next meeting to talk about final completion and contract closeout.
Yes, sir, I would think so. And also after this, if you have some time, discuss legal issues for 4 or 5 minutes.
Sure. Happy to. And then, so that's it on the facility. Let's see. Deanna and I discovered an issue with the ceiling panels in the dispatch center just yesterday. We were there this morning taking photos. We have a meeting this afternoon with the architect to make some changes there. So, I mean, just little things like that that keep coming up.
And we do have lights in the hallway.
We do have lights in the hallway. Yeah, our facilities guy walked through the last couple of days and we stand in the main hallway in the center. And if you look up, there are no lights, there's no conduit, there's no outlets, there's no plug, there's nothing. So we're like, what about our hallway? Lights, hello. They've now assured us, Deanna just got an email, they've assured us there will be lights. Radio update, Deanna, do you have anything for us?
Oh, I have a little bit. We have some rectifiers that failed. So we've moved some around that were backups that other sites. We've got one on order. I anticipate we're gonna be ordering 1 or 4 more, just depending on what the final quote is on those. We have a couple microwaves on order. We ordered those, I think, like in January, so everything is just really slow. We have some equipment for the new facility that we're waiting on. I had brought that to the board previously. I think their worst case scenario was like October 18th, isn't that what we figured out yesterday, something like that. So I'm trying to get an update if possibly that's coming in any quicker.
Is that the switch you were talking about?
Yeah, it's like a, I wanna call it a router network. It's a network piece. Server.
It's a
Okay.
gateway.
Yeah, there we go, gateway,
Allows
thank you.
both to work at the same time, yeah.
Also, the grant, I've heard from Murray Cantwell in Carrera's office, and we're on their list for the second step of that. No guarantees that we're gonna get it, but it's moving forward, so I'll keep you posted on what I hear on that.
2.2 million, is that?
2 point, yeah, pretty close, 2.1 something, yeah. And then I'll just have to be creative how we spend that money, because we have microwaves, so we need to start replacing now, and I don't wanna wait, and the money, we'll receive it in 23, so we can't spend it till 23, so. Baker's Corner, Robert, any feedback from your folks at all? No? Okay. That went live, it's probably been a month now ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. I was just wondering if any difference in coverage out there for its receive site, so let me know if you hear anything. I've got a wireless reviewing that lease agreement. I did make contact with Deer Island. Can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head right now, Bob, something normal. Anyway, so as soon as I hear back from Day on that, then we'll try to get that contract probably maybe next month on the agenda. To finalize that.
Speaking of, thank you. Any questions for Deanna on radio things?
Yeah, Chief Herrera made mention about putting together a committee to discuss that grant, and suspended and the needs of the agencies. Are we still gonna go forward with putting together?
John, question?
Yeah.
We might want to wait.
Once we get down the road where we see that that grant is going to be approved, I'm more than happy to have a committee for some radio planning.
Yeah, and the way they kind of explained that to me was that if the federal budget is approved, is that the end of September?
Yep.
Then we would know by then. If they don't approve it, and they just extend the budget, then it could be a little bit later, but we would potentially, if they approve a budget, would know in October, early October.
But then even if they approve it in September, October, the federal budget, those dollars don't become available to us until mid-23, I think it is. May or June. something
Or
like that.
maybe a little sooner if they actually approve it, and they should, but it's only if they extend it that, we wouldn't
Yeah.
actually get it
Just
till
see
maybe
the
March.
dollars, yeah.
Yes, and out west,
Better.
improved coverage out west.
Yay, thank you.
Good. I do want to back up on the building. I apologize for backtracking here a little bit. Along with our new facilities maintenance guide, as expected, there are some expenses that we have with a building. I had actually built out and quoted a shed through Tough Shed, and it was like $18,000, and it scared me a little bit. We have one from another vendor, a local vendor, Heartland, that works through Lowe's. So we are going to be purchasing a shed, storage shed for our maintenance guy. It's going to be about 6,000 installed and ready to go. And the other thing that it's within the limits, so I'm just kind of advising, but if you have any input, I'm happy to hear it. We will be purchasing a vehicle on the state contract, which when I first started looking around at prices of pickup trucks, I got a little scared. But on the state contract, where you get your fire trucks and police cars and things, it's very reasonable. So pickup might not be right away, maybe in a month or two, but the shed and other tools, lawnmowers, weed whackers, things like that, just tools that we'll need in the building, we are going to start acquiring over the next month. Any questions about that?
just be advised that, even through state contracts, the wait is long.
Yeah.
So order now.
That's what we've heard. Or order sooner than later, and hopefully we'll get it
Yeah.
at some point when when the buildings get in their roof already or something. So anyway, that's all I have, Sheriff. Thank you.
Is there any questions for John or Deanna about any of these items? Hearing none, we really don't have a good of the order. Does anybody else have anything else they want to address or bring up?
We do need to close the executive session.
Yep.
Weathers.
Dennis Weber has his hand up.
Yes, I do want to inform staff that we are doing some reorganizing with our IT department, and the backup location for 911 will need to be moved to a different location. So John, you might want to get a hold of Kim Hort, who is our IT director, and kind of coordinate that. Don't know.
That's
exactly.
in the works already. Yeah, that's already, it's coming over here.
No, it is coming.
Yeah, Kim, I don't know if Kim maybe was not privy to that.
We
but
hadn't heard that yet. Okay, super. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? If not, we're gonna stand in adjournment. Our next meeting will be July 20th. And we are gonna go into a closed meeting, which I guess we not open to the public. What's that?
Correct.
That's all I have to say.
It's close. Involving labor issues.
Labor personnel stuff.
Yes.
So we